In this video, we will be looking at Alexander Grischuk's white repertoire. But firstly, who is he? He's 36 years old, he's from Russia, he's currently 4th in the world with a rating of 2777. How did he qualify for the candidates? He qualified as being the winner of the FIDE Grand Prix series. We will now look at his white openings. I will not be looking at every single one of his openings. It will just be too much work. I will be using the Chess24 database to find the most relevant games to present in this video. Using the Chess24 database, I will now filter out Grischuk's games. So firstly, let's type him in here. He has played 3,282 games. White games 1,671, but to make this video relevant, we will filter out from 2019 up to present day. And he has played 112 games. Now we will click the opening tree feature, and here we go. In these 112 games, he has played 48 d4, 37 e4, knight f3 25 times, and just once c4 g3. Let's keep clicking the top option. d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, d5, knight c3 12 games, and g3 10 games. And now we have a split bishop b4, the Ragozin defense, or bishop e7, queen's gambit declined. So let's have a look at bishop b4 first. The most important game is his victory against Sergei Karjakin, played on May the 18th. This was his win in the Moscow Grand Prix. So we will check this game out now. Bishop b4 is the start of the Ragozin defense, and cd5, ed5, bishop g5, h6, bishop h4, e3, bishop e2, and queen b3. Grischuk now gets the bishop pair. I've noticed this in a few of his white games. He likes to get the bishop pair and then press on with this advantage. Bishop takes check, queen c3, c6, knight d2, knight e4. Bishop takes d8, knight c3, rook d8, a4. And Grischuk went on to win a very technical endgame, playing some really nice, accurate moves. c5, knight f1, rerouting to g3. Put the king on d2, get space on the queen side, but also the king side. Guarding e4, space, rook a3, take, e-file is now open, rerouting, knight f1, putting pressure on d5, coming into f5. Knight will sit there. Let's see what happens. Bishop e4, knight e3, knight f5 check, take, and Grischuk can now use the g-file as well. Knight sits really well there. Rook g8, rook g1. Using this rook because we couldn't move the other rook, because this rook needs to keep an eye on h5. So rook g1, rook c1 defend, e-file now, a6, rook e5, rook g1. Knight h5, but this knight, it was defending d5. So now capture here, check, grabbing on g7, rook h7, b4, take with check, 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 take, check, king up, check here, f4, f3, f5, check, and after this, Sergei resigned. We continue from the split before. Instead of bishop b4, the Ragozin, now we will look at bishop e7. And we will look at the top option, bishop f4, castle, and e3, similar to Ding Liren's white repertoire. This is exactly what Ding did, and this is his most common position. Check out the video on Ding Liren, where I look at his white repertoire over here. I'll attach a link in the description and in the top right corner. Let's click database, and we see Grischuk is +2 in this line, scoring 2 very important victories against Topalov and Yu Yangyi. Let's check these games out. e3, knight d7 played by Topalov, and bishop e2, d takes c4, castle. White can get this pawn back soon. c5 first by Topalov, take, bishop c4, and now b6. Queen c2, bishop b7, rook d1, knight b5, coming into d6. a6 forcing that to happen, and this is a theme in Grischuk's game. I mentioned this already, but he really does favour the bishop pair. Rook d8, rook c1, knight e4, bishop b4, rooks come off, queen there, drop the bishop back, queen b3, queen a3, and here we have it. Bishop e2, bishop e1, placed nicely, but it's whether white can use the bishops in the future. Let's check it out. h6, knight e5, b3, rooks come off, queen b2, f3, bishop comes out to g3, knight c4. Now he really does have the bishop pair. Two bishops against two knights. It's so difficult to defend. The bishops control so many amazing squares. Queen c8, queen e2, bishop b5, bishop c4. Let's keep playing. Let's see how Grischuk won this. Centralize the queen, swing the queen over, a3, b4, getting space, h5, put the queen on f4, bishop a6, knights can hardly move. Queen now comes into the position, queen h6, bishop back to d3, e4 opening up even more, queen e3, queen d4, centralize, no need to swap queens off now, keep them on, your king is safer and the bishops control too many squares, bishop c4 check, queen right in the position, you could go queen e5 but you went queen h8, king g6, defending h7, bishop e5, queen e7, queen g8 check, knight g7. Let's keep going, queen d5, bishop d6, queen e5, bishop b5, queen d5, bishop e8 check, king h7, bishop d7, queen on d5, bishop d6, bishop d7, just controlling too many squares. Queen e1, bishop e5, queen d3 check, bishop c3, queen c4, bishop c6, bishop d5, bishop d4. Really nice move, just exploiting the pin on this diagonal. To the king on f7, b5, queen c6, finishing touch there. Now what's happening here? If queen d4, then queen e6, and that will be it. King g7, you can go queen f7 check. Wherever the king moves, then you can form a mating net. You can't go here because queen g8 is mate. If you go here, let's use the light squares around the king. You don't have time to take the knight, but bishop e4 looks good. And then mate is either on g6 or h7. d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, d5, and g3. 10 games. Here we have a split between bishop b4 check and bishop e7. I will not look at the top option because they are all rapid and blitz games from the Paris Grand Chess Tour. Here is proof. Clicking database, we have these 4 games and the date says it. Between July 28th and August was the Paris Rapid and Blitz. Because of that, I will not look at this. Going back, I want to look at bishop e7. The Catalan main line, bishop g2, castle, castle, and here we have a split. 5 games. The bottom one is important, Grischuk beating Nakamura in the Grand Prix. September 20th, also important, Grischuk beating Dominguez in the World Cup. He also beat him again, but this was the rapid portion of the World Cup because it was 1-0 each, and that game went to a rapid tie-break. The top one is also a Grand Prix, but I won't look at that one against Navarra because it was a draw. Let's check out a game. After castle by white, d takes c4, queen c2, b5. We are looking at his victory against Nakamura in the Grand Prix. a4, b4, and now knight d2. Bishop on g2 attacks the rook on a8, and at the same time notice the pawn on d4 is hanging because the black queen can take it. c6 blocking, and after knight c4, queen takes d4, rook d1. White has typical Catalan compensation. Even though black is up a pawn, I would never play like this as black. You're always defending in this type of chess game, and really, for me, it is horrible. Queen c5, bishop e3, queen h5, knight d2. White is just so far ahead in development. Knight g4, Nakamura will get the bishop pair. Knight f3, defending against mate on h2, take a5, knight d4. Just check out black's pieces on the queen side. So what if you are up a pawn? White has two knights, bishop, queen, rook. This rook will come here. I wouldn't say the queen is ideally placed on h5. Let's see what happens. Bishop a6, rook c1, bishop f3, queen g6, bishop e4, bishop f3, bishop e4, king g2, no repetition. How on earth will black get his pieces out? Let's see. Rook a7, h4, f4, knight b3, bishop d3, swapping off black's best piece. Knight c4, check, bishop e4, again offering a trade, and finally white gets his pawn back. Bishop f3, h5, bishop f6, take, rook d1, rook d7, take, and h6. Later on, Grischuk went on to win. d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3. Now I want to look at b6, the Queen's Indian, and Grischuk has always played g3. Let's check the split. Interesting enough, Grischuk has played Duda 3 times in the Queen's Indian. The two most important games are the bottom two, November, because this was part of the Grand Prix. So I will check out the draw and this victory. g3's just been played, bishop a6, b3, bishop b4, check, bishop d2, bishop goes back, misplacing the bishop on d2, bishop g2, d5, and one game was castle and the other game was c takes d5. First, let's look at this because there's an interesting idea in the middle game. Take, castle, knight c3, rook e8, knight e5. Rook c1 is a logical move, putting a rook on a half open file, but it's the next move coming up. After knight d7, Grischuk plays rook c2. Really cool idea. Bishop f8, bishop f4, and we see it. The rook can go to d2, or maybe even the queen can shuffle over to c1. But I think rook d2 looks good because after a move like c5, it really does give white this option. Knight d7, queen d7, take, bishop g5. And notice the hanging pawn center. The problem really is the pawn on d5. We have potentially 1, 2, 3, 4 about to put pressure on this center. And white has a nice advantage here. d4, bishops come off, giving black doubled pawns, and after knight a4, rook e5, the knight rerouting, it can choose to sit on d3 or c4, but sitting on c4, e3, f5, queen h5, rook d2 is fair to say Grischuk outplayed Duda in this game in the Hamburg FIDE Grand Prix, but it did lead to a draw. Now let's check out the other game, which was the rapid portion. Let's take it from here. Bishop g2, d5, and now castle. Castle, knight e5, c6, and bishop c3. This is a nice way to reroute this misplaced bishop on d2. It can go to c3, or it could have gone to f4 to g5. When you put the bishop on c3, follow up, this knight can go to d2. Knight f d7, knight d3, keeping all pieces on the board. Now black does win the pawn on c4, but there's some interesting compensation. Knight b4 is the move. This knight, it attacks bishop and pawn. Duda goes for the second pawn, and now knight takes a6 and knight takes a6 in the game. Very interesting move here. You can throw this intermezzo, which is vital attacking the rook on a1, because you force this capture and now knight a6. You may be asking, why should black do this? This is why, as seen in the game, because after knight takes a6, bishop c6, you can throw in b2 now, but rook b8 was played and a b3. This is the problem. The rook on a1 now has such an active role in this game. Knight b4, take, rook a7. The rook is in, knight f6, e3. Rook c8, drop it back, knight d2, rook e7. Rooks come off and knight c4. White has a really pleasant advantage here, controlling so many squares on the queen side. Note, this rook cannot go to a8, so Grischuk uses the a file now for the queen. Knight in the center, rook c1, rooks come off, queen into the queen side, and now bishop b7. Wow, let's check this out. What is the point of that move? Blocking the queen, protecting f7, so Grischuk plans to attack f7 soon, I believe. Let's check it out. Bishop b7, check. Queen a5, bishop c6. Queen a7, bishop e8. So we're attacking f7 using knight and bishop. Knight takes e8. And instead of queen takes e8, Grischuk plays a really nice fancy move here. Wow, with knight d7. White will play queen takes e8 next, and there is no good move for the black queen to stop that. Queen a5, queen takes e8, check, doesn't matter, king g1 is fine, just swap it off. Yeah, you get a pawn ending. We have 5 versus 4 on the king side. That is good enough. d4, knight f6, c4, g6, 12 games, and this is the surprising thing, he's played h4 in 7 games. However, if we look a bit deeper and click database, the most important one is the bottom game against MVL, in which black won this game in July. This was one of the Grand Prix. From July 28 up to August 4th, this is the Paris Rapid and Blitz. I will not look at them, but I will look at the bottom game. Let's check out this exciting victory by MVL. Because Grischuk played h4, MVL struck in the center straight away with c5. This is a good strategy. When one opponent attacks you on one side of the board, it's good to strike in the center. d5 and b5, very interesting. MVL is saying this pawn move is so bad, I am going to go into a benko. I will give up the b pawn and get counterplay very quickly on the queen side. C takes b5, a6. Now it gets even more interesting because Grischuk doesn't even take it. He goes e3. Bishop g7, knight c3, castle, knight f3, d6, a4. A bit funny to have both flank pawns on a4 and h4. Bishop g4, rook a3. Take, bishop takes b5, knight a6. White would have a great position if this pawn was back on h2, but then MVL would not have gone for the benko gambit. e4, knight b4, bishop e2, castle, rook e1, queen b7, bishop g5. Take, knight e5. Now it gets really complicated. Rook f1, c4, b3. Rook c8, bishop d2, and knight d3. It looks like MVL has got some nice benko compensation. He is playing on the queen side, and the knights are dancing around in the white position. f4, queen b4 attacking the rook, knight b1, c3. Lots of pieces are hanging. F takes e5, and knight b2 first attacking the queen, because the knight on b3 is hanging. Queen c2, take, queen b2, queen e4. Even though white is up a piece, he's lacking coordination. Queen d2, rook c2, he gets the piece back. Queen e4, rook e4, take. Knight d2, rook g4, check. Now we have the endgame, taking on h4, rook back to d4, and he chose rook g4 check. Rook b4, let's keep playing, rook c8, rook c3. Even though white has 2 pawns on the queen side, he cannot even move them. What a shame. Knight g1, rook c2, with either rook f4 coming next, or even bishop to d4. Check, rook f4, check, here, and g5. Using the fact that you can't take because f2 is going to 4, and this bishop can come in the game. Rook f1, check. Rook f1 defending f2, check. Rook c3, rook f4, and the f2 pawn will fall. Knight h2, take, take, rook c2, and Grischuk resigned. In the Riga FIDE Grand Prix, the game is over, because if you defend the knight, then notice both rooks are on the second, so let's just use this one, back rank checkmate. One famous victory I want to point out is knight f3, knight f6, c4, c5, knight c3, d5. And if we check the database, this is his win over MVL back in November in one of the Grand Prix. I will attach a link to this video in the description and in the top right corner. I've already analysed this game, so go check it out if you are interested in this Anti-Grunfeld game. Looking at e4, we'll look at c5. 10 Sicilian games, and knight f3 most of the time, and the interesting thing to note is, after this split, let's go to database. The most important game is really the bottom game. He played Caruana back in June in Norway. This ended in a draw in the Shevnikov. However, all the other games are of less importance. Last opening I want to talk about is 1c4. Even though he played it once last year, he played it against one of the candidates. c4 and now e5. One game, g3. He played Caruana back in the FIDE Grand Swiss. So let's check out this game now. g3, knight f6, bishop g2, c6, and after d4, e4 already, it's move 4. I don't know too much about this position, if anything. Very complicated English. Coming up, a3, stopping bishop b4 check, but what is Grischuk's idea? d5, knight c3, bishop e7, f3. He wants to break up the central pawn structure of black. Take, knight f3, castle, castle, h6, knight h4, planning to come into f5. This opening is already so interesting. The f file is half open. White has the chance to build a center. Also, Grischuk gives Caruana the chance to take, which we see in openings such as the Catalan. White deliberately gives up the pawn on c4, but then white gets the center. Rook e8, knight f5, bishop drops back, and g4. Already so interesting. Bishop takes f5, rook f5. Now first question is, why not knight g4? It's because we go e4, gaining a very important tempo. Queen on d1 attacks, knight on e4. If you move it back, I think white is just coming through with e5. This knight doesn't have a good square. cd5 will be next. Even though white has given up the g-pawn, white will be crashing through in the center. So g4, really interesting move, and in the candidates, it would not be a surprise if Grischuk played c4 more often than not. Maybe he won't be playing e4 so much because most of the opponents in the candidates will be defending a Berlin. Bishop f5, rook f5, and here we go, e4, g5, g takes, g6, rook back to f1. Such a nice looking position, and once again we have this pattern. Grischuk really does favor the bishop pair, which we saw earlier in this video. It is worth giving up a pawn to try whatever it takes. to get the bishop pair, to get an advantage with white. Grischuk really is a fighter with the white pieces. He is always willing to mix it up. Queen h4, bishop f4, take, bishop g3, and e5, f5. Caruana is defending really well. b3, knight b6, take, queen b3, queen f7, rook a b1, check, and Grischuk has to return the bishop pair now, or else the pawn on d4 will drop. Bishop f2, take, rook d8, knight e2, rook e7, and in such a position the queens came off. This led to a draw. Summarizing Grischuk's white repertoire, he mainly plays d4. If he plays knight f3, he wants to transpose into a Catalan. When he played e4 last year, it was mainly in rapid and blitz games. And he played c4 just the once against Caruana in the Grand Swiss. I hope I have covered Grischuk's repertoire in some depth. This video, it really took a long time, so I would appreciate so much if you like the video and subscribe to the channel at the same time. Let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed this video. Also, check out the playlist for the candidates over here. Thank you so much for watching.